Hi everybody, welcome back to another SUP boarder video where we're going to be looking at the range of Gladiator SUP boards. Now we're going to be looking at the Pro range from Gladiator. If you haven't watched the Gladiator Origin range, which is the cheaper price point range, definitely check that video out as well. And also there'll be the Elite range we'll be speaking about as well. Definitely worth watching all those videos because it'll really help you understand which one of the Gladiator SUP range is right for you, if any at all. So if you haven't watched any SUP board videos before, we do lots of paddleboard content, loads of technique stuff. Definitely check out SUP Boarder Mag, our main website, and also have a browse of our YouTube channel. There's tons of content to keep you motivated with supping, foiling and winging. So if you're watching this video, you're trying to understand if brand Gladiator SUP is right for you and is the Pro range of boards that they make the ones you should of boards. They still have the core sizes, so you're still talking your mid-10 6s up to the longer 12-foot 6s in length. Just a little recap if you haven't watched the Origin review regarding lengths and widths and thicknesses of the boards. When it comes to thicknesses of the boards, Gladiator are really key at making a good range of boards in different thicknesses. They come in 4.7 and 5.9 inches thick. If you are a lighter base rider, 70, 75 kilos and down, definitely looking at a 4.7 thick board will be more beneficial to you. If you're heavier than that, you're right up to 120, 130, 140 kilos, definitely look towards a 5.9 inch thick board because it's going to be stiffer and it's going to offer you more volume when you're standing on the board. The downside is if you're a lighter paddler and you're on a thicker paddle board is you're going to have a bit more windage to cope with, so the board's going to get affected by the wind more. You're also standing higher out of the water, so you're going to find you're not so attached to that paddling experience opposed to being on a thinner base board. You're a little bit lower down, it's going to be a bit nicer to paddle. Definitely if you get out and try two different thickness boards and you're that 75 kg or 70 kg or 65 kilograms, there's a big difference in how the boards feel. When it comes to the width of the boards, the wider you go, the more stability you'll have, but the slower it's going to paddle. 32 inches wide is a really good all-round size board for most people to start with. If you want a bit more stability, definitely look towards a 34-inch wide board. As regarding the length of the board, the longer you go, the faster the board is going to travel, and the straighter line it's also going to go in as well, but it's going to become a lot less maneuverable, so it's going to be a lot harder to turn around. So if you're somebody maybe who wants to do all types of paddleboarding, maybe even catch a few small waves, looking at a slightly shorter base board like around a 10.6 would be better than looking at a 12-foot 6 board. But if you're after a board to go a little bit further, maybe put some dry bags on the front, take your lunch to the next beach around the corner, going for a longer base board is going to be easier for you to do that. With the Pro range of boards compared to the Origin range of boards, you'll notice there's more boards that are longer than 10'8" in the Pro range. So the range is pushing towards the person who's maybe done paddleboarding a few times or is wanting to put a little bit more effort and energy into their paddleboarding sport. So maybe you've even decided that you are going to get into paddleboarding as your hobby and you want to do it a couple times a month, maybe even once a week or something, then the Pro range of paddleboards is going to be a better range to buy into compared to the Origin range, which you could still do these types of things with, but because of the poor designs, the Pro range will offer you that bit more performance. So that's why those longer base boards are in the Pro range more than in the Origin range. The weights of the Pro range boards, they're fairly close, to be honest, to the Origin range of boards because there's a few more layers of materials in there, which we'll speak about in a minute. A 10'6" is around 9.5 to 9.8 kilograms when we weighed it, and the longer base board, around 11 foot, weighs about 11 kilograms. So there's still fairly lightweight boards that you'll find easy to carry moderate to long distances. So now let's talk about the constructions of the Pro range, because this is why the price points change between Origin, Pro and Elite with Gladiator SUP. So the Pro has still got that double laminate fusion layer, so it's still 2 layers of PVC that is bonded together, not glued, remember, and it's still got the same Den textile substrate in the board as well, the same as the Origin board. But the big difference between the Origin and this board is the way that the rails are made. So the way that the Pro range rail is made is the top layer and the bottom layer of PVC is actually wrapped right around so it's almost touching, and then 2 layers are added on top of that. So in effect you have 3 layers of material on the rail. That does a few things. A, it gives you a much stronger and more hard-wearing rail because you've got more layers to basically get through to get into the air. You're very unlikely to wear a rail down just by putting it down, but having those extra layers or the extra materials will stop and make that board much more hard-wearing. But the big thing that it actually does is it changes the actual shape of the board. Not the outline shape, that still stays the same, but the actual rail shape of the board changes quite a lot when you have this triple X strong rail, which is what they call it. And it really makes a big difference to the nose shapes of the board. It pulls the nose in and gives you a much more refined nose shape. We've done lots of videos on refined nose shape in lots of other more advanced videos. We've done stuff on Subtitle Pro. We've done stuff talking about touring SUPs with more refined noses. A refined nose gives you a much better paddling experience in the water, because as the water hits the nose of the board, because it's slightly more pointy, the water wraps up and over it and underneath it much more effectively than just hitting a slab-sided big round nose like on the Origin range. So the Pro range of boards, they're much more refined, so they're again going to be easier and quicker to paddle, offer you that more performance, hence why they're called the Pro range. Not only that, they will actually give the board more stiffness as well. So if we move on to our deflection test now, remember we did this with the Origin range, so check that one out. But the deflection test is where we put the boards on a gap of 1.5 meters apart, and we put 75 kilograms of weight on the center of the board, and we measure how much the board bends or deflects. So we pump these boards up to 18 psi and 20 psi to give you two different deflections, and we also tested the 4.7 inch thick one and the 5.9 inch thick one. And just a reminder on the psi pressures for these boards, they have a max psi pressure recommended up to 26 psi, just like the Origin range, so a high psi pressure. Again, if a brand's willing to say you can put 26 psi in the boards, they are standing to a big claim, and they're obviously very proud of their boards, and they're well made. There isn't many brands out there, to be honest, that recommend, in fact I don't think any brands out there actually recommend their boards being pumped up to a maximum of that pressure. I'm sure they will tell us in the comments below if they have, but definitely there's not that many of them. So looking at the deflection test, at 18 psi, the 4.7 dropped 15 millimeter, and then if you increase that pressure to 20 psi, it dropped 13 millimeters. And the 5.9 inch thick board, if we pump that up to 18 psi, that dropped 11 millimeters, and pumped it up to 20 psi, that dropped 10 millimeters. So you can see a couple of things there. One, this range of paddle boards is stiffer than the Origin range. Two, the 5.9 inch thick boards will be stiffer compared to the 4.7 inch thick boards, which is why if you're a heavier person, you're going to be better off going for the 5.9 inch thick board, or if you want to carry more weight on your board, like a touring, putting a dog on the front, taking a few people on your paddleboard, the thicker boards are going to be better as well. Because the Pro range of boards is a little bit stiffer than the Origin range, you're going to find it's going to give you that much more performance as you're paddling as well. So the board isn't going to flex so much, it's going to be quicker to paddle again. Not as quick as the Elite to paddle, but we'll speak about that in another video. So really interesting when we do these deflection tests, we can really see the differences of how the boards are made without sort of cutting them up. So good construction on the Pro range here, nice refined nose shape, and it makes a difference to the stiffness. So you can see why the board costs a little bit more, and it's going to give you that much more performance on the water. Before we talk about some of the key points and the boards we like, let's talk about the package you get with the Gladiator Pro range. Just like the Origin range, you get the same type of equipment. You get your bag, your paddle, your repair kit, and your fin and your leash, but all of the stuff is a little bit nicer. Starting off with the bag is the same bag with the shoulder straps, really well comfortable shoulder straps, waist strap. You still have the option of almost removing your shoulder straps and putting behind a Velcro sort of flap. The big difference between this bag and the Origin bag is this bag comes with wheels. So much easier to transport. If you're going to be rolling it down a road, you can just grab the handle and roll it down the road. So these bags are definitely the more performance bags. You see them with the more expensive boards. Board at this price, nice bag, so really good bag. Same size and everything else is the same as the Origin bag, so it's still easy to get your board in. Going on from there, let's talk about the pump that you get. The pump you get is still a Bravo pump, which is the same brand pump you get with the Origin, except the Bravo is a Bravo Super pump, which is a pump that we've tested, I think that was a couple of years ago now, which won one of our SUP border pump tests. It's a very easy and light pump to use for a number of reasons. For a start, it's quite light itself. This one has actually got foldable foot pegs, so you can actually make it nice and small when you're rolling it up. And they actually have unscrewable handles, these ones, so you can actually make this pump really compact. But it's really effortless at pulling it up and down and getting the air back in the board. Still has the same recommended pressure it can put into the board as the other one from the Origin range, but it's just much easier to put the pressure into the board on the downstroke. It's still a two-way pump, so it pumps on the upstroke and on the downstroke, and when the pumping gets hard, you turn the nozzle over and you just pump on the downstroke. Really nice, comfortable pump. A lot of other brands, top brands, have got this pump as well. It's nice to see this pump in this price point of package. Big old step up on the paddle with the Pro compared to the Origin range. You get a carbon-based nylon paddle with this. So carbon is better than fiberglass. It's stiffer, it's lighter. You're going to get more performance with this. A stiffer paddle means you're going to be paddling further for the less effort, or you're going to be paddling faster for the less effort, because as you're putting the power in the paddle shaft isn't going to bend and flex too much. It still has a nylon-based paddle blade, which is actually the same shape as the Origin paddle. So it's still hard wearing. You still haven't got to worry about, dragging it up the beach and smashing into rocks, which is nice. It's a sort of pretty average paddle blade shape that we see with most all-round sort of packages. Absolutely adequate to get you into the sport, get you enjoying it, get you paddling a little bit faster again, because it's a carbon shaft. If you're going to be going and entering races and trying to catch bigger waves, you're going to want to upgrade it in time. But to be honest, the paddle itself, it's nice and lightweight, easy to use, and it's going to give you a good amount of performance because of the carbon shaft. Just like the Origin one, it's nice because you can take the middle section out, put the top section and the bottom section, and make a small kiddie's paddle as well. So you can slide that bit in there. It's a little bonus paddle there for the little ones. You haven't got to buy a separate one. You get a repair kit, and in your repair kit there's a few nice little things. One, there's an Allen key, which means you can tighten up all of your paddle attachment points here, so you can get a nice secure fit, which is nice. And also you get a couple of fin screws as well, so you get a spare fin screw, so when you lose your fin screw or drop it in the sand, it's gone forever, there's another one in there as well. The fin that comes as standard with all of the packages is a US box fin, just like the Origin. The most common fin box in the world, really easy to upgrade. And this one is the touring shape fin, which comes with the slightly longer base boards. It's a little bit more swept back, a little bit wider on the tip there. It's going to help you go in a straight line much, much easier than the more traditional surf sort of shape base fins. This is actually a really big bonus this year, having this base fin compared to last year's Pro boards. The Pro boards were really flexible, those fins. They worked, but they didn't actually offer you that much stability, because actually as you're rocking from side to side with your paddleboard, your fin is actually going to give you quite a bit of support there. And the stiffer the fin is, the more stability you're going to get out of your board. So it's a nice plastic, light, well-shaped fin, but it's nice, it's much stiffer this year. And just like the Origin range, you do get the same style leash, color-coded with the boards, really well finished off, nice neoprene around here, Gladiator logos and everything. It's a good coiled leash that's easy to stay on the back of the board. And just like I said in the Origin video, I'm sorry if you've already heard this, but if you are paddling in open seas where there might be tide, or you're paddling in river conditions where there might be moving water, please be aware of using any leash without a quick release. So if you're going to be paddling in those sort of moving water conditions, any tidal flow, get your leash onto your waist and get it attached onto your waist with a quick released buckle. So therefore, if you get entangled or trapped by the leash with sticks or stones or caught on the riverbank or around any obstacle, you can quickly release the board. I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the industry in the future. We're going to be pushing a lot with leashes and awareness of leashes. So just be aware, leashes are very important. You've got to use them with your paddleboarding, but it's also use the correct one. The warranty you get with this board is 3 years, so it's still a really good, solid warranty. The most expensive boards in the market sometimes come with 5 years, and the cheaper price ones come with a year. So 3 years is a fairly hefty warranty for a board of this price. The boards themselves are very different looking and finished off compared to the cheaper price point Origin. The first thing you'll notice is the colorways are really nice, I think, in this one. Got a few different colorways, a lot of different sizes are finished off in different colors. The deck pads themselves, very neat. The first time I've seen a deck pad like this, not because it's a crocodile skin deck pad, which is on top of the board here, but because it's a double layer deck pad. So you've got 2 layers of EVA. It makes it a bit nicer to stand on, a little bit softer on your feet. It does make you a little tiny bit higher off the board, but I wouldn't say that's hardly anything. But really it does look pretty smart, and it allows you to have multiple different colors on the board. It's just a nice feature, and it does look more expensive compared to the cheaper price point Origin. The handles, front, back, middle, are exactly the same as the Origin, except the central handles are offset, which does make carrying the boards a little bit easier if you have longer or shorter arms. The bungee setup is different to the Origin boards. You've still got the same sort of styling, as in this sort of crossed over, a little bit different from other people on the market. A fairly big bungee actually on the front here on most of the all-round boards and the more touring-based boards. You can get a lot of cargo in there, and you've still got a smaller double strap on the longer boards at the back as well. I do think the general colour of the Pro range is pretty cool, and all the boards are finished off with a good dark colour, so if you're paddling somewhere dirty or you've got some dirty riverbank to get down to get to your paddle location, they're not going to show up any of the muddy marks. Moving on to cons or negatives and things you need to be aware about with these boards. Just like the Origin range of boards, there isn't that many. They have thought about this range and have brought it together really well at a good price point. One thing I suppose is because this is a pro range of paddle boards, a range of boards that is pushing towards somebody who maybe is a little bit more committed to SUP, maybe wants to learn a little bit more about SUP and get better at paddleboarding, it would be nice to see raised EVA kick pads on definitely the all-round base boards. What I mean by that is a little foam pad at the back of the board. So if you want to try and get yourself into step back turns, turning the board faster, pivoting on the tail, it's a good awareness point for you to put your foot. Lots of other brands have got them, and I think on the sort of 10.6s, low 11-foot length boards, it would be neat and it would stand out a little bit more from the Origin range. I touched on the bungees, saying they're a little bit different shape. I don't think they're that bad actually on the Pro range because they're still fairly big. The touring board, you can still get quite a lot on. I think the back one, if you wanted to be using this board for touring, because you really could be, you would probably want bigger bungees on this board at the back though. The front ones are okay, but the back ones could be spread apart and a little bit bigger. But I do think, and I have got to remind myself of the price point of these boards as well. They are sitting at a very comfortable price point that challenges a lot of other brands at way higher price points for the same quality of board. They're up there on the stiffness, they're not too heavy, the construction is obviously really nice, and having that refined nose shape does make your board paddle much better. Now it's worth mentioning there's a lot of very good boards in the Pro range that are 11 foot to 12.6, and they have a good range of widths and thicknesses for every rider. A good example for that is the 12.6 LT. This is a 4.7 inch thick board. It's 29 inches wide. It's going to be really good for the lighter paddler who's wanting to have a really easy board to paddle a little bit further and faster. Also, they've got wider based, longer boards as well. So if you want a board with more stability, they've got those boards covered. And remember, if you want to carry more weight on your board, even if you're a lighter paddler, the 5.9 inch thick board will offer you the most stiffness for carrying more weight. If you've got any specialist questions and comments and you really like to nail exactly which board in the range will be best for you, make sure you subscribe to Subboarder Pro and get us a Subboarder Pro email in. Ask us as many questions as you want and we'll definitely drive the best bit of equipment out there for you. Maybe from Gladiator or maybe not. It could be from somebody else as well. If you've got any questions or comments about Gladiator, have you used them, have you got one of these no pro boards, please get them in the comments section below and get your full review on the Subboarder website, because we'd love to hear your readers' review so we can help Gladiator improve their products into the future. I hope you found this video interesting and informative and it's helped you understand if the Pro range of boards is the range of boards you should be looking at in Gladiator. Check out the Origin range if you haven't already, and also the Elite range for the more expensive boards, and see what they offer if you want to paddle that little bit further and faster.